Hi, all. I am Alitra Perryman, the Convention Planning Chair for the Mississippi NAACP State Conference. And today we're going to talk about the work of the State Conference. We have with us Dr. Corey Wiggins, the Executive Director. We also have our community organizers, Matthew Campbell, Jamil Johnson, and LaRhonda Odom. So I'm going to let them each introduce themselves, starting with Dr. Wiggins.
Hey, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Corey Wiggins. I have the wonderful privilege of serving as Executive Director for the Mississippi NAACP.
And Matthew.
Hey everyone, it's Matthew Campbell, community organizer with the Mississippi NAACP.
LaRhonda?
LaRhonda Odom, community organizer with the NAACP.
Thank you. And Jamil.
I'm Jamil Johnson, a community organizer for the NAACP.
Okay, so Corey, Dr. Wiggins, kind of give us the vision behind the work of the state conference. What do you guys, what's the framework that you're working with?
Sure. No, thank you. Look, I'm just excited to be here today to talk about the work that the wonderful team here in the state office does. Not only do I have the privilege of serving as executive director, representing our member volunteers all across the state of Mississippi, but I get a chance to work with a great team of people, our community organizers that we have here with us today, our admin support, Mrs. Franklin, Jelaine McDowell, and our communications person or consultant, Santasia Coleman. And ultimately, we really sort of work together in a way to think about how do we support our member volunteers and the work that they do in their local community. The NAACP is a grassroots bottom-up organization, which allows us to be in every community across the state of Mississippi through our member volunteers who functions in local units. Most counties have at least one NAACP unit. In some places, in some counties, it may be multiple, like Hinds County. We have a Clinton branch NAACP and a Jackson City branch NAACP. Our work is really sort of this idea of how do we support our local volunteers who are on the ground in the community addressing community issues. We are a multi-issue civil rights organization. And in addition to doing our local and support our local units, we really are thinking about the work that we have to do and what we do statewide, particularly around our policy advocacy. And so our community organizers, in some cases, they're working both with volunteers, but at the same time advocating at the state level on the different programmatic issues that they're working on. And a core component of that is around how do we use and talk about local issues that matter to communities and translate that into policy advocacy, structural issues that limit opportunity for so many Mississippians.
Wow. So going into that work, Matthew, can you talk to us a bit about the recent successes with the criminal justice work?
Yeah, so I came on in 2019, and one of the things that I primarily worked on when I joined the Mississippi NAACP was an issue-based criminal justice campaign. It was a DA accountability campaign. And so, we recognize district attorneys as one of the most powerful positions inside of local criminal justice systems. And so that body of work was primarily about being able to engage our local member volunteers in different circuit court districts across the state and other community stakeholders to do community education, to talk to communities about the importance of their district attorney. And educate folks about the role that they play in helping us transform into a more progressive criminal justice system. And also some of the electoral organizing we did behind that community education work, our local volunteers, members going out, knocking on doors, informing folks about the upcoming district attorney election in their community, placing phone calls and so forth. And so, like I said, everything that we've done criminal justice wise has been issue based. And so some of the issues that we advocated for, that we expressed, we made sure that those issues were in alignment with community interest. And so those are some of the issues that we advocated for as a community. And community went out and voted based on those issues. Some of those issues being progressive bail reform policies, policies that reduce sentences, less punitive sentencing, so on and so forth. And so we saw a lot of success from our criminal justice campaign, our DA accountability campaign. We knocked on thousands of doors across the state, primarily in Southwest Mississippi, in Circuit Court District 6, also in East Mississippi in Circuit Court District 10, knocked on thousands of doors, made thousands of phone calls. We sent thousands of pieces of mail to households in those communities. And folks really turned out and voted. People went out and elected the first Black and woman district attorney in Circuit Court District 6 down in Southwest Mississippi. But of course, as a nonpartisan organization, as an organization that doesn't endorse political parties or candidates, we don't view it as a victory for a political party or a political candidate. We view it as a victory for community. The community members that went out and knocked on doors, the community members that made phone calls, that attended those community education sessions, that went out and voted based on those issues, and they voted for a candidate that aligned with those issues. And so all of that work was issue-based, and we've seen much success from it.
That is fantastic. I know that you've been doing some housing work too. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and so that's one of our core issue areas as well, just access to quality, affordable housing across the state of Mississippi. Housing instability primarily impacts African Americans. African Americans are more likely to be evicted than any other racial group in the nation, in the state. And so it's an issue that primarily impacts our community. And so we've been just trying to find innovative, creative ways to impact this issue. One of the things that we've really been working on lately, the state has a rental assistance program, which was created under a federal program at the end of 2020. And so we've been working really hard with a number of our branches, a number of our local member volunteers on hosting these rental assistance clinics across the state. So far, we've hosted, I believe, 6 or 7. We have 2 that are upcoming this week and next week. And so we've been really working hard on that to connect as many people and communities to this resource because we know how dire a need it is. And we've been trying to work to fill a void, to make sure folks are connected to this resource because we know housing instability, housing insecurity affects thousands of people across the state. And those are families primarily with kids under 18. And so it's an intergenerational issue. And it's an issue that affects pretty much every aspect of a person's life, such as educational outcomes and health outcomes. And so it's an important issue. And I couldn't be more proud of the work that our branches, our local members have done to really put this effort together. We've had dozens of volunteers from across communities that were local NAACP members that have showed up to these rental assistance clinics and really assisted people filling out their application. And one of the things that we ask people after those clinics, we have a survey, and we ask folks, hey, did this volunteer help ease the difficulty of the process for you? And most folks agree with that statement. So the work that our local members are doing in that regard is remarkable. And a lot of folks wouldn't be connected to that resource without the work of our local branches, without the work of our local member volunteers.
Fantastic. So, LaRhonda, I know that you've been doing some work about around Medicaid expansion. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes. Recently, I've been a part of our statewide coalition on Medicaid expansion. We've been attempting to work on strategies to help move that forward, both statewide and on the federal level. We were on the state level, we were hoping for a hearing on Medicaid expansion, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen. On the federal level, we were hoping, and it still may happen, that Medicaid expansion would become a part of the Build Back Better legislation that they're working on currently. And it is a part of a resolution in that bill. And if it passes, which seems as though it will become part of a national Medicaid expansion program that will, in about 2 to 3 years, become a national uh, health care or health insurance program for everyone.
Okay. So I know that you've also done some work with the tobacco education program. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Are you there,
So yeah,
LaRhonda?
since I was hired back in 2000, back in 2019, that was one of my major projects, working with the Institute for the Advancement of Minority Health and their executive director, Dr. Sandra Melvin, who's also our state health chair for the NAACP. And we've been working on a variety of um, programs and projects, conducting focus groups to gather data on uh, Black men who smoke, uh, young Black men who smoke from the ages of 12 on up. And we've also been coordinating some peer network um, projects, web, what do you call them? I'm sorry, I'm blacking out. Um, they're not trainings. They're designed to bring all people who work in tobacco cessation together to talk about what we can all do to help move the work forward. And so recently we've decided to uh, just create a Black male health equity forum, which we hope will get more Black men involved in the discussion around not only tobacco cessation, but also other health issues. And that will, we are trying to kick that off. We had a first meeting about what we want to see happen with that about 2 weeks ago. And so we're moving forward with that, and we hope that will be successful in helping to get men to talk about health issues in Mississippi.
Fantastic. So, Jamil, I see that you've been working on some environmental justice issues. Can you talk to us about why that's important to social justice and what kind of work you've started doing around environmental justice?
Yeah, so environmental justice is immensely important to any type of social justice because, to be frank, it's really an existential crisis. There can't be any fight for voting rights, for any type of equity, any type of equality, or any of the things that the NAACP has stood on for so long if the world's burning around us, right? And not only that, Black folks, to be frank, have been strategically put in places where they will be around more pollutants, right? When natural disasters happen, we're going to be places where the levees might break. We're going to be in places where the tornadoes might be worse, right? This is shown by zoning laws going back to the early 1900s, where if there's an industry one place, there will just so happen to be zoning for housing right beside it, right? Or if there were housing one place, they would just so happen to build an interstate right through the neighborhood, right? It to the extent that through the pandemic, when next to no one was driving, Black folks were in more car accidents than anyone else because a lot of our communities are close to interstates, right? So it's just more traffic and it's more dangerous because it's more cars. But specifically to Mississippi, One of the most prevalent ways that one of the most prevalent environmental injustices happening is with the wood pellet plants, right? So essentially, there were three. I think there are two wood pellet plants in the state, and it's just the process of turning hardwood into wood pellets that people can use in barbecue grills, or as fuel, or whatever they may do. And essentially, the companies were based in the UK. The EU banned a lot of those because the pollutants were too strong. So where did they come? To the southeast, where a lot of folks prefer money over, the actual safety of citizens. And so for years, these plants reported that their pollution was one thing, which was drastically lower than what the acceptable level of pollution was. And then they were pressed about it. And once they had to retest, they were nearly 4 times higher than the legal limit, right? And essentially, that's just one issue. It's probably just the tip of the iceberg, because when it comes to environmental catastrophes, there's what happens with pollution and somebody living next to a plant that may give children more likely to get asthma or bronchitis when they're younger. It may give people heart problems, or make them at a higher risk of cancer. But then there's the stuff like the ice storm that happened last year, right? Jackson specifically was in really, really dire straits, right? Rural counties throughout all of Mississippi were in really, really dire straits because the infrastructure in the city has been neglected for so long on purpose. And not only has it been neglected for so long on purpose, it was a fight to get any help from the state, right? And that's by design. And so one thing that we've always focused on is how we can get our voting rights, how we can, and how they can ultimately lead us to so many different places to help us. But as time has changed, and as we kind of see every year in a different way, there's a different catastrophe, right? So our focus needs to shift. So what I'm doing right now is trying to learn as much as I can about who are the polluters, who's affected, and ultimately get the knowledge out there first, so then people understand that climate change isn't some abstract idea. Pollution isn't some abstract idea. It's affecting us right now, and it's affecting our ability to live long.
Wow, you're right. So I kind of want to have a open conversation for a few moments about civic engagement and why civic engagement is important. Um, and if anyone wants to jump in to kind of talk about civic engagement and the importance, especially here in Mississippi.
I'll take a quick stab, but I definitely want to get our organizers in on this, because they are the ones on the ground really, really doing this work. And more broadly, I would sort of say, right, we think about civic engagement in this very broad framework that is focused on issue advocacy, which I think you've heard from our organizers today, right? The work around criminal justice, the work around, engaging, Black men around health equity, engaging folks around environmental issues in rural counties and communities across the state. That's part of our civic engagement work, and it's the issue advocacy work. And if you think about how do you sort of talk to people and work with people on local issues, and then from there, to make sure the folks that you're talking to are registered to vote, right? To be able to participate in the democratic process, and then moving from there to alignment around the issues that matter to people in communities and candidates, and holding them accountable to those issues as they're running for office, and getting people engaged in the voting process. And then, also protecting access to the ballot, whether it is the, voter protection hotline that we co-host with One Voice, or whether there's opportunities where we are having to file litigation or utilizing a litigation strategy to ensure that people have access to the ballot, able to vote and participate in the democratic process. All of our organizers in some shape, form, or fashion touching in and touch on the process of civic engagement. Civic engagement even while they're working on those issues that they're working on. But I'll make sure I give space and room for our organizers, because ultimately these are the folks who are spending each and every day talking to our local units, talking to branches. They're hearing from NAACP members each and every day about what's going on in local community, and working with them and supporting them to strategize how do they start to impact those issues locally as well.
Anyone else want to jump in about civic engagement?
Yeah,
you go
I
ahead, LaRhonda.
wanted to add that one of the things we have been really good at, our branches have been really good at late is jumping in and offering COVID vaccination sites around the state. Our branches have been very good at going out and having COVID vaccination sites, whether it be, at the local church or drive-through sites. They really jumped in on that when the call was sent out that there may be a need for community-based organizations to get involved in that. And they've used those as opportunities to engage folks to become members and also to get registered to vote. So I think that's one example of how our branches have been using this outreach effort to engage more people and to encourage them to become, more active in their communities and become voters and that's been a really great for me to see since I'm still feel so new to the organization. It's been really uplifting so far.
Matthew?
Yeah, and I think that the thing about a lot of the civic engagement work that we do is how it extends beyond the ballot box. And just to use some of the criminal justice work we've done as an example, after we were able to launch criminal justice civic engagement issue-based campaign, after that election, community stayed engaged, and we were able to initiate the co-governance process. And the co-governance process is about accountability. It's about making sure that community members have a say in the decision-making process, the policy-making process in their communities. And so that's also a big part of the civic engagement work that we do. We start at the community education level. We go on to making sure that folks go out and vote, that we increase voter turnout, especially among some of your lower propensity voters. But then it goes beyond that, making sure that we continue that cycle of engagement throughout the process, throughout the democratic process. And that's essentially how we build strong communities. It's through that continuation of the cycle of civic engagement. And so that's the thing that I think that one of the things that I want to highlight about the work that we do as well, because I know a lot of folks might view us as an organization that, does good community education work, does good work around voter engagement, voter turnout, but doesn't always see the other side of it, some of the work that we do after folks go to the ballot and cast their vote for a particular candidate, that the process continues. And we want as many folks as possible engaged in that continuation. And so I just wanted to point that out too.
Thank you. Jamil, do you want to add anything to the civic engagement part of the conversation?
Just that in Mississippi, the payout for civic engagement is probably higher than anywhere else. They wouldn't try so hard to stop us from voting and to redistrict so hard and make districts so small if it wasn't possible for us to make changes.
You're right. So this year's theme of the convention is fighting forward. And in closing, how do we fight forward in Mississippi? I'm going to start with LaRhonda. Fighting forward. How do you see us moving this fighting forward in Mississippi?
one step at a time. Our history here in fighting for freedom is so great and so deep that it it's almost as though we understand that I think it is as though we understand that the fight is not over and we still have some fight in us. Um, there are a lot of issues where our people today continue to fight as earnestly as they have always. And so I think that we understand more, possibly more than any other group of people, that this fight is, I think it was Ida B. Wells that said the price of freedom is eternal vigilance or something to that effect. And I feel here at the in the state conference of the NAACP have been very vigilant. Our members are vigilant about things that are going on in their communities that they know will infringe upon their rights, not only to vote, but to be active citizens, to be a part of decision making. So I feel very optimistic about our our state our state's position, and particularly our communities' uh, vigilance around these issues and moving forward.
Thank you. Jamil, I'm going to go to you next and ask you about fighting for it and what does that look like for younger people in Mississippi?
Fighting forward looks like keeping an open mind. To be frank, getting over yourself. Just because you have one worldview, just because you've learned things one way traditionally, doesn't mean it's the only way. Doesn't mean that there's even a right way. I think the most important thing um, is to not let outsiders break up the community, to not let your petty ideas you get from Facebook or Instagram break up the community, and to take the I out of it, really make it about us, because the folks who've done the greatest work, they did that boldly, and it wasn't a lot of them. They bucked a lot of the traditional standards. So there's not going to be another MLK. There's not going to be another Malcolm X. There won't be another Hollis Watkins, right? There's only going to be new folks with new ideas and new names and new potential. So getting bogged down trying to be somebody else, trying to recreate a vision will never work. I think the important thing is to take the lessons of our forefathers and mothers and the people that came before us, but open it up even more, make it more accessible, because the folks that do the real work more times than not are the folks that got bullied early on in school or nobody liked at one point. So if you don't make space for everybody, then you're not really working for the community.
I like that. Matthew, fighting forward, what does it look like?
Yeah, well, it's a collective effort. And so that means that we had to continue to identify ways to make the process of the work that we do more inclusive. And I think that, we've already been doing a great job of that. We talked a little bit about how some of our civic engagement work, we target low propensity voters. And then after we finish with the community education work, the voter engagement work, we segue to some of that co-governance work. And so it's about how do we encompass or incorporate more people into the process. And so because I always believe that, the power is in the people, the power is in numbers. How many folks do we have on our side that are collectively working towards a common goal, that are collectively working towards transformative change in the state of Mississippi? So I believe the more folks that we're able to successfully activate in every community across this state, especially every marginalized community across this state, the better our chances are of actually pushing towards effective policy change, system change, so on and so forth. The more people that we have in the fight. And so, I think that's what we've been committed to as an organization, is just making sure that we identify those folks and making sure that, not only do those folks know what the mission and the role of the Mississippi NAACP is, but the role and the power that they have as an individual to contribute to this collective fight for justice, equity, and equality, so on and so forth. So for me, that's what it's about. It's about making sure that we're able to strap up and boot up as many soldiers across the state as we can.
Thank you, Matthew. And Dr. Wiggins, so what does that look like, fighting forward for the NAACP?
Look, there are, even as I was listening to our organizers talk about this and their questioning, their response to the question, I can't help but really be excited. To really sort of think about the people, the wonderful people that we have working on the NAACP at the state conference as part of our team and part of our staff. When I think about the work of all of our member volunteers across the state of Mississippi that they do each and every day, not because they get paid to do it, but they do it because it's the right thing to do, I can't help but sort of be excited and draw strength from that. I think fighting forward is really sort of going back to the bedrock of the NAACP and who we are, is the fact that we are a group of people. We are an organization that have people that live in community and who have lived in community and have done what's right in community. I think what Matthew, LaRhonda, and Jamil said, and they both sort of touched on this in different ways. I think Matthew talked about people and the army of people. Jamil sort of talked about in the context of folks doing what's right and people making room for inclusive ideas. And even in LaRhonda's sort of talking about this sort of long history of perseverance, right, of doing the work. And I think fighting forward is not forgetting who we are, where we come from, the people who have laid the foundation for us, not forgetting people like Winston Hudson out of Leake County, Mississippi, who was a longtime NAACP member, who was an advocate for rural healthcare. Not forgetting, the first field secretary for NAACP, Medgar Evers here in Mississippi. Not forgetting members known and unknown, the members who continue to serve each and every day, whether it's our state president, Reverend James, our state treasurer, James Corwell, our convention chair, Litra, economic chair. So it's so many people who continue to show up each and every day, both acknowledging the past, thinking about how do they show up now in the moment, in this urgency of now. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there is a forward-looking hope that I think people have, and not the hope that's the fluffy kind of hope, but a hope that's rooted in the work that needs to be done as we continue to make sure that opportunity is more available to all Mississippians, making sure that Black folks living in Black communities can thrive and live a prosperous life to support their families, and ultimately allowing people to live with the dignity that we all deserve and were born with, and fully activate that in whichever way that you want to activate it. And I think the thing that I'll just sort of sort of wrap up with, fighting forward for me is about Black joy. Just that everybody can show up each and every day in their own selves and be joyful, and live with that and can express Black joy each and every day.
Well, thank you so much. And that brings our session to a close. I thank each of you for the work that you're doing in our community and continue to fight forward. Have a great day.